those are probably the two biggest indicators that we look at when we're implementing a new client is how the products get fulfilled, and then also wholesale versus non-wholesale.
The number one thing I would say that drives us at Luminous is accountability. You're using us for this to work.
Actionable things that are going to help me move my business forward.
Get ready.
Hey guys, welcome to Ops Unfiltered. Today we have our newest employee, coworker. His name is Taylor. What's up, Taylor?
Not much. Excited to be here. Excited to be on the first podcast from myself. Just excited to be at Luminous. This is awesome.
Yeah, let's go. So today I'm bringing in Josh and Taylor. They head up our CS team. So that's everything from account management, onboarding, implementation, anything that has to do with those things. That is Josh and Taylor's domain. So Taylor comes from a company called foreUp Golf. So quick background, that's an ERP system that our CTO, that's where he came from as well. He built a foreUp, he built an ERP from the ground up for the golf industry, and Taylor was heavily involved in implementation and onboarding there. So Taylor, let's start out with this. Or actually first, Josh, what was the decision-making process behind scaling the next implementation person?
Yeah, so my background definitely isn't in onboarding and implementation or even account management for that matter. So my background is primarily e-commerce. So we thought it would be a great decision to bring someone on board that had tons of experience. So shout out to Taylor. I've noticed especially his attention to detail with like onboarding and implementation is unmatched. He's more detail oriented than myself. So he's been instrumental already in implementing new processes and really keeping in mind how we scale the department and how we do that in the most effective way possible.
Yeah, I think Luminous was just scaling to a certain point where not only the sheer number of clients was starting to become overwhelming, because you have to maintain a certain level of a certain standard, because all Luminous clients expect us to be extremely hands-on, and you were doing that with every single client. So it got to a point where, okay, we need to hire somebody, but it needs to be an intentional hire. We can't just hire some random college student. Like, they have to actually they have to bring something to the table. So Taylor, why'd you join Luminous? Like, what was the decision-making process there?
Yeah. Main thing was it seemed like Luminous was people that I could relate to. Everybody that I had met, I'd reached out to Josh, kind of got some feedback from him. Obviously I know Brendan, and I felt like that this was for me, I was looking for something new. I was looking to expand. I've been at the same place for a long time, which isn't a bad thing, but ultimately I was ready for a change in industry. I never wanted to be known as just the golf guy. That was kind of the space that we were in. And Luminous to me is over the last couple months has just been something that is meeting a need, which was something important for me. And the next thing that I went to, that it's filling a need, that our customers are excited about what we're doing, and that we're hands-on. We get to build a relationship, as well as that goes from like employee one to everybody. We're all involved. We all care about our customers, and that's important to me. I want my tech guys to know just as much about the customers and want them to be as successful as I do, not just because I'm talking to them, but because it's a reflection on like what they're doing every day too. So, and I genuinely felt that, and that was awesome. So that was like my main decision.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the ethos of Luminous, I was in a sales call this morning, and so the prospect he was just like, hey, look, all the tech stuff is fine. Like, we'll go over that. Dude, 50% of our choice to go with you guys or not is, can I pick up the phone and call somebody that understands operations? And I thought that encapsulated our value prop. It's like 50% of our value prop is that. It's like, and if you know, if you've gone through an implementation with other systems, then you know how important that is. And I think that's something that I've been really proud at starting in Luminous. Josh taking that even further. And then now Taylor's coming in. He brings, I think, a lot more wisdom and maturity and scalability to the implementation processes. So what are some things that you've learned in implementation onboarding? Like, I guess, what is in all of the actions that you do with our clients, what are the thoughts or the ethos that drive those actions? What do you stand for, basically?
Ooh, no pressure. Good question. For me, it's about time management, if that's okay to start there. And the main reason being is I have so much bandwidth in a week or a day or whatever time frame you want to use, and where we're trying to grow and we're trying to scale. A lot of this is can I be efficient with my time, but still offering a customized, hands-on, connected interaction and experience with clients and implementation. So how can I build that customization into a process that can help us be efficient as we grow, as we expand, not just our customer base, but our employee base as well? That's something easy for them to come in and learn and hit the ground running, right? So that's for me. I think that's answering your question, but I have to look at it and say, is this going to add value, or how is this going to add value? And being able to, does this need to be a phone call? Can this be an email? Can it be a text? I love that we're able to text a lot of our customers, that they're able to text me and ask some questions, while they're in implementation, and that we're available to help them at all the time, and it's not that that's at the expense of my family or anything like that, but that's who we are. There's a relationship there that I feel like is sustainable and scalable.
So this will be the first question of like rapid fire questions. We're really trying to get to know our new implementation team and what drives you guys. So first question, what is the gap in the market that you guys are solving? For example, between like a SKU Vault and Luminous, what gap are you guys feeling or building towards?
Yeah, I guess I can speak to that a little bit more. In this space, I feel like there's a lot of implementations that go like self onboarding or something like that, where it's like, hey, this is how you do it. Good luck, kind of thing. Like, if you have any questions on like best practices, good luck, kind of thing. So for us, it really comes down to, we are here for you. We genuinely care about your brand, and we're going to get this thing to the point where it works. Because you hear so many horror stories of other systems where it's like, oh yeah, we implemented that, but it never worked. Where we come at it and it's like, hey, we're going to do everything in our power to get this to the point where it works and it's solving problems.
So Josh, we've gone, a lot of the clients that we onboard, we're following up a botched implementation of just a different tool. What are some examples that you guys have seen of implementation being botched, and then how have you fixed it?
So, I mean, there's a couple different scenarios of like, I've heard from a lot of people where it's like, oh, I didn't know I could do that in this software, the system that they're on, that they're coming from. It's like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. Or like, oh, that would have been a good idea. Or, oh, we really needed that feature and they just brushed over it. We don't know how to use it. So I think it all comes down to communication, where in implementation, it's like, we like to go to the client and say, hey, what's the best way to communicate moving forward? Like, if we need something quick from you guys, or if you guys need something from us. So I think it really just comes down to that present communication. Like, frequently we'll do group messages, or we'll create a Slack channel, or heck, Google Chat, whatever it may be. So I think it just boils down to, are you in present communication with your clients, addressing questions, collaborating with them? Because e-commerce ops is so flexible and different for everyone. You almost have to have a system with implementation people that are willing to collaborate with you and find the best solutions.
The number one thing I would say that drives us at Luminous is accountability. So when somebody signs up for Luminous, I think we all share the same sense of accountability that you're using us for this to work. I think that's probably the biggest difference that I notice is other companies are like, you're paying us a SaaS subscription, like you figure it out. Here's some FAQs, here's some articles. We have really well-trained CS reps that will like, they'll listen to your problems, but at the end of the day, like they don't really care if the system's working, because that's the kind of the point of SaaS is put somebody on a subscription and you just profit off them until their business is dead.
And if they're locked into a long-term contract.
Yeah, it's like we got you locked in. So that the number one difference I notice is at Luminous, we actually feel accountable for this solution to be working. An example that I've seen in implementation is like LitJoyCrate, for example. They were on Skubana, and there were a bunch of little things that just weren't working. But the number one difference was it genuinely was just accountability. Like either the CS reps diving in deep, understanding the problem, and working with them until the problem is solved, or which that could require a lot of process. It could require multiple conversations to actually understand the issue. It could require a feature request that gets communicated correctly and gets put into a roadmap. But at the end of the day, I think that's why, like LitJoyCrate, one of their specific issues was they had one way that they did pre-sales, and they needed the system to account for pre-sales a certain way. After a lot of discovery, we ended up fixing that problem. And I think that's just one example of the many things. Every company has like 3, 4, 5 things like that, where it's like, okay, the system's generally working for me, but they never quite got us to the finish line on these 3, 4 things. And that's like Luminous, because we have that accountability. We come in and solve those things, or we help you with a workaround, or
There's very few issues where we'll just say, good luck, like go elsewhere. We always are diving in to those problems to find the best solutions, where there's always limits to what like a system can do, but we're always willing to dive in with the client and find what works best. Even if it's really sticky, might be a tough solution to find, but we're willing to dive in and find that solution with our clients.
And I think what you mentioned too is like a lot of times that takes multiple versions, if you will, multiple times collaborating and figuring out like, why are you doing it that way? Is that necessary, or how much leeway do we have to maybe change things here, instead of just trying to have Luminous fill the same needs or processes that they were doing before? Can we make a process a little bit better? Can we improve upon that? And not just to make it fit what Luminous does, but can you be more efficient on your end as well? Like we've been able to go to that level with, LitJoy and say like, hey, how flexible is this? And that took several calls, several meetings, several visits to their warehouse to be able to make like a recommendation and be able to move forward with a realistic solution for them. Like we go to that level.
Yeah. Taylor, I have a question for you. Coming from the golf industry,
Yeah.
So working with like physical brick and mortar locations, and like those companies are typically pretty structured in the sense that it's kind of predictable. You have a point of sale that you have to implement. You have the inventory backend system. You have the T-sheets and time bookings. Coming into e-commerce now, what do you think has been the biggest difference between what is needed in onboarding in a structured industry versus e-commerce, the Wild West?
Yeah. It's a little more cookie cutter coming from the golf industry, meaning I can do one thing and it's going to apply to most courses. They're going to have very similar structure, with very limited variability, and that comes, I guess, because of a lot of them are run by a municipality, and that's kind of directed from them. And where in the wild, wild west here, it's very different. It's very much, I own my brand. I want to run it my way, which isn't a bad thing, but I have my ideas. And you could talk to however many different brand owners, and you're going to get that many different ways of doing something similar, from selling on Shopify to selling on WooCommerce to, Amazon or wherever, Etsy, whatever platform you're using on, like how you're going to get growth, what's your plan moving forward. And it's all very different, and it works for them and maybe like a specific industry that they're in, where their buyers are looking for their products, right? So how can we then help them and understand the full picture, I think.
And I think that also, you just hit on a really cool point where that's the biggest difference that somebody will experience in implementation is because we have that accountability, it leads us to just ask questions, and sometimes challenging ones, like, ask why 5 different ways, like get to the real issue. I think that's where other systems, they don't do that. They just don't. I can confidently say they do not do that. I've been in that boat. Get on the call with your NetSuite account manager, and they're going to send you an FAQ like, nope, you do it this way. This is how you do it. Sorry. If you want to do anything else, then here's $100,000 bill for customization costs. I think that's the biggest difference with Luminous is because we service the founder and the operator who want to do things their way. And we're genuinely curious to find the exact reason behind their way of operating and then fit the system to that. And sometimes things just don't work. Sometimes there are unreasonable things, but we'll sure as hell like get to the bottom of that. Instead of just saying, hey, can you do pick and pack this way? Nope, do it this way. But what if I don't want to? Nope, oh, sorry. If you could set expectations to all future onboarding clients, what would you guys say? If you could do that just in like a couple sentences, what would you say to the future prospective clients that are about to get onboarded?
Get ready. No, I'd say we're ready to get in the trenches with you to a certain extent, obviously. But I would just say, like, we're there. Like I mentioned earlier, like we're present with implementation. We are there for you. And if you have questions or concerns, like I said, we're willing to dive in, and we're willing to dive in deep to how to solve those. So I'd say, yeah, like don't be afraid of implementing a new system like a Luminous. There might be a little bit of a learning curve, learning new things, but I'd say don't be afraid of it. Be ready to tackle it, and we'll be there for you as well.
Why shouldn't they fear? If somebody's about to implement Luminous, why shouldn't you be afraid?
Well, I mean, a lot of people we work with, they're first-time brand owners, scaling maybe $2 to $4 million or whatever that may be, and they may not feel super confident in the way things are set up, or like operationally. They're not sure like if it'll even get adopted. They're might be hesitant to come off of like Google Sheets because that's their comfort zone, right? It's easy. They're comfortable there. So I would say don't worry because it's not our first rodeo. I tell people that all the time, that like we've done this before, and we can help you find solutions that work best for you as a company, because it's not a cookie cutter deal. Like your needs will be drastically different than others, but we can help recommend best practices and get you implemented the best way possible.
I think it also goes back to, again, that common theme, accountability. We feel accountable with you guys to get this working. Now, that definitely includes, like, we both got to be diving in. If we're diving in more than you are, then there's something wrong. Like, there has to be equal effort here. But it's like I would almost guarantee somebody is, if you care as much as we do, or you feel as accountable as we do, we'll solve your problems. We'll figure this out.
Yep.
I think that therein lies the issue with, like, expectations I would personally set would be, hey, no worries. We care. We are accountable to the outcome. We need you to be equally accountable. It's going to require just as much effort as we do, like it's going to require that on your end. And I would also set an expectation probably of collaboration. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're not always going to know the solution. Neither are we. It only so if you find yourself coming to, we're going to run to problems. When we run to that problem, if you or us are constantly saying, nope, it needs to be done this way, here's the solution, I think that's where you run into problems. It needs to be very much a collaborative approach of, look, we're going to run into issues. When we run into those issues, let's stay curious and let's really collaborate to understand all of the different options. There in operations, e-commerce, you run into a problem, there's honestly probably like 10 different solutions. The first one that comes to your mind, it's not the only one. And you can only get there with like true collaborative attitude.
And us understanding the business. That's why we're so prodding is not the right word, but that's why we ask why so often in like implementation, because if we can understand the business, maybe 90% of what the client understands of it, we can make much more educated recommendations and suggestions. That's why, heck, our first call with most of our clients that we bring on is like super discovery focused, where it's like, okay, like where are you housing your inventory? 3PL in-house, what are your different sales channels? We get into it with them, and then that puts us in a better spot to give those recommendations that they can take and we can collaborate on a little bit more effectively.
Follow-up question. Let's say when implementations go bad or they go through a rough patch, what typically causes that? What makes implementations unnecessarily difficult? So I'm not talking about general difficulty, implementing a new backend system. It's hard. It's just hard. And it just comes with problems inevitably. What are some unnecessary problems, and what do you think causes those?
I think we've kind of been touching on it a little bit at this point, but I think that sometimes we create a process or a cool formula on Google Sheets that we're super excited about as an owner or something like that, and we don't want to leave it behind, and so we want to find a way to take this new system but still do our old processes, and being able to, like you said, to be flexible. Like we want to be flexible as well, but we're going to ask for that as from that end sometimes as well. And again, being able to say like, what can we remove? What can we simplify? And what needs to stay the way it is? And why does it need to be that way? But to answer more of your question with where they get stuck or why, I'm not remember exactly how you worded it, but like, I think we really want to work together, and when it turns into a you versus me, or there's just things that they're kind of get stuck in. I don't know how else to say it, but I think that's where we can kind of come in and say, let's tear it down to the studs, and then let's rebuild what's needed. Let's put that in place, and then we're going to add. Like, we want to add value, not just do what you're doing right now, but like we want you to grow moving forward too. And so I'm always kind of keeping that in mind as we are doing this implementation. Are we set up for success, not just now, but into the future? So there's some things that maybe people don't understand or don't see. And that comes down to like, maybe I need to explain things better. So making sure that they're understanding me as well as I'm understanding them, like why we're doing this, why we're having this process, we're going through this flow. A lot of times I get people who want to go to step 10 before we've hit steps 2 and 3. And so making sure that we're going through some of these things in the right order, and making sure they understand why that is. So I like to make sure they understand the end and a little bit of the process. And I feel like that can answer a lot of their questions, get us on the same page, and then we're moving forward versus the alternative of wanting to get to the finish line before we've kind of gone through everything we need to, if that makes sense.
hmm I would something that I would add is the biggest issue that I see, or rather, problems come from this more than anything in my experience is it's as simple as expectations. When a customer or a prospect has the expectation that Luminous will just solve all my problems without any work in between. And yes, that's the destination that we're trying to get to, is that Luminous is solving your backend problems. It is the backbone of your company, and we've solved all those pain points that you were wanting it to solve, that you were sold on. I think where we run into issues is, and for example, an expectation of, hey, inventory planner does forecasting like this. Like, I thought Luminous was going to do our forecasting. Basically, like, Luminous can't be on feature parity with every single point solution on the market. Like, in the e-commerce ecosystem, people are exposed to so many different types of tools. Like, even think about ClickUp, Asana. Luminous has a project management, but you can't expect Luminous to be on feature parity with Asana, ShipStation, inventory planner, like literally everything. Like, well, why can't you just have decades of building for every single module? It's like we're very much going to have to. It's a very collaborative approach and the expectations are like, look, not everything is going to be perfect, but all in all, Luminous, you'll be able to operate much better once you're all in one system.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like one thing that I've come from, again, with a background there, is being an all-in-one solution versus competing with a company that has however many employees focused on one specific piece. They're going to do it better than we do, but there's a benefit to being all-in-one, right? Rather than doing it through an API or something like that, right? You're going to have access to all that data, and I feel like that's what Luminous is doing. Project management, inventory, accounting, whatever it might be, being able to have as much as we can in one solution.
And that's the ultimate problem with e-commerce. If you're a modern e-commerce company that sells wholesale, big box retail operations, you use a 3PL, FBA. I mean, the depth of features that you need. What Luminous is ultimately like against is, I wouldn't say something as strong as like we're against, but what we're solving is when you get to the super glued tech stack with like 8 different solutions solving for all those things. And at the end of the day, there's not one central source of truth. So yeah, that's all I would add. It's like expectations around timeline, around features. We're not going to have every single little thing you need, but we will be able to solve the baseline of problems and more. Yeah. Anything else about that?
I'd say clear assignments. So like if you're dealing with a company that's got 20, 25 employees or more, or whatever the situation, got to have a clear space where you're tracking tasks and keeping everyone accountable. So that's another thing, like with our larger clients, come to them and say, hey, where do you prefer to track this project? Whether it be like a Google Sheet or if they have some sort of internal project management, always need to keep that front and center, especially for like the main stakeholders of the company, so that everyone stays on track.
Okay. We're going to just bust through a bunch more questions. So just give like quick answers, like both of you, and so that we can clip them out. What's been the best implementation experience in Luminous history and why? What made it that?
That's a good question.
Josh has done more than me, but I'd say for me, it's been, I don't know if you want like a specific customer or not, but like I really enjoyed working with Ember, just because they were open, and it was great to be able to go in, see their process, and it's a little bit different than a lot of others that we've worked with, but we're able to go in, get it implemented really quick. They're willing to make a change to ShipStation from, I don't remember what they were using before, but and and we were able to get them up and going pretty quick. And it was very collaborative, and Daryl's awesome.
So collaborative and very open.
Yeah.
Very curious.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd say a recent one would be like full rack, where someone who's not afraid just to like to dive in to the system, like kind of similar to Ember, where it's like, oh yeah, like we'll get our team in there using it and like we'll figure things out. Like obviously we will provide all the training, but if a client's willing to also just dive in and start learning the system, they'll get really good usage out of it, and they'll get implemented pretty quickly.
If you were a Luminous client, how would you utilize the implementation team? How would you approach a implementation?
I think I would ask a ton of questions. Like, because we've worked with so many different companies and brands, I would ask questions like, what are other people doing to become more efficient in the warehouse? Or how are people using quotations in purchasing? I really like the question from one of our clients, Pillow Cube, where he was basically, what's the most important things that your clients do in Luminous day in, day out? Which I thought was an awesome question. And then we were able to go through, okay, yeah, if you were to spend X amount of time in Luminous per day, this is what you need to hit. And it really just narrowed it down for them so that they knew exactly what reports to access, different actions to take. So I think just questions like that, that's what I would take advantage of.
Nice.
Yeah. I think the system can do so much, but focusing on, and I like that question of give me 5 or 10 things that I can focus on. We have a bunch of reports. Give me 2 or 3 reports right now that I can look at, and I can see real time actionable things that are going to help me move my business forward.
Mm-hmm.
Me personally, I would call up Josh. I would have his number, or Taylor. I would text you guys. I would call you. I would 100% take full advantage of that. Like, you have your account manager's phone number. We're super hands-on. We'll dive in and help you guys solve problems. That's number one for me. When I implemented the system, it was really difficult. Like, our account manager, it would take a week to get a Zoom meeting, and by then I'd even forgotten the problem, or like maybe I'd already solved it myself. So yeah, that's the biggest thing, is like just being able to just call Josh. Hey, dude, real fast, I'm running into this. Like, how would you solve this, or what should I do? And getting a quick answer. I think that's massive. What are the biggest indicators of implementation timelines?
What we've found, biggest indicators in like tracking timelines for implementation is whether you have a 3PL or if you do in-house fulfillment. In-house fulfillment tends to take a little bit longer just because there's more employees in the warehouse to train up, different processes to go over, different modules. So like if they were using pick and pack or something like that. Whereas connecting to a 3PL is a little bit more just connecting up different tech. Another piece would be if they do wholesale. So like also EDI involved with that, where again, another module introduced, more complexity in the operational stack, if you will. So those are probably the 2 biggest indicators that we look at when we're implementing a new client, is how the products get fulfilled, and then also wholesale versus non-wholesale.
If you're wanting to implement Luminous in like 1 to 2 weeks, like speedy implementation, let's get this thing going, super high priority, what would you tell clients to prepare for?
I'd say have all your data ready, like SKU catalog filled out with all the pertinent info, have like your CRM ready to go. And what's also been really helpful with some of the clients we've onboarded recently, where they'll even have like a flow chart showing, oh, these are different sales channels, this is how we fulfill. And that gives us a really good picture of how their business works. So I'd say just scope of how the business works, and then also get your data ready for quick import, quick implementation.
Nice.
Yeah, I'd say, buckle up. Like, we're gonna go through and we're gonna change some things. You got to be ready for it, but we'll be there. Like, we're gonna be there along the way, and we might not be able to go in as much depth as we want to for some pieces, but we'll get you up and going, and then we'll make tweaks. Like, it's not done when you're like, an implementation isn't done at go live. In my opinion, implementation is never done. It's an ongoing thing where you continue to learn, and like, yeah, we'll get you what you need in the next week or 2. and it'll be bare bones. But like, let's continue to grow. Let's continue to make this the system that you dreamed and envisioned it would be. And that's going to take some time, but we're going to be there still, even after go live.
What does a customer use for visibility into the implementation timeline and tasks? What lens do you guys give to the customers and all the stakeholders of the companies to see the progress and what you're doing?
So we track a lot of it internally on like Asana and different things like that. And we communicate those timelines and those tasks to the clients. But then it also depends like how they'd like to see it. We've tried multiple different tools like project management, onboarding, but we've also found it effective where it's like, hey, where do you want to track this? Like, what's your tool of choice? Where do you want to see all this? And then we're flexible enough where we can move it simple as a Google Sheet all the way to like if they internally use, I don't know, Monday.com, ClickUp, whatever it may be. We're happy to dive into that a little bit more as well and make sure everyone has the visibility that they need.
Cool. What is the process like for a feature request? So let's say you run into something, or a client is using the system and they're just like, man, it would be really nice if you could do this. What is that process like? How much say do customers have on what we put into the roadmap?
I think that's like, in my eyes, customers control the roadmap. And not 100%, but like they control like what direction we're heading, what areas of the software need to be improved. And as far as the improvements go, or feature requests, like generally those will come in through Josh or I, or through chat or something like that. And what we're gonna do is, I want to understand it. What are you wanting it to do? What are you missing? Is it something that we currently have, but it's not as you would like it? And then from there, I think we'll go in and we want to design something. We want to reiterate with you. So being able to, depending on how in depth we need to go, if I can come back and say, hey, this is what we've got so far, shoot holes through it and let us know what you think, and let's make some tweaks and adjustments, and then we'll get out a final product, right? And it's not saying that everything is going to be done, but I think a lot of the time we're listening to all feedback, and that's how we're going to grow is seeing what we can and can't do.
I would say if I were a Luminous customer, I would be most excited about giving feature requests because we listen intently to customers' problems. So if our forecasting or if our inventory, maybe there's a component of it that you wish you have a wish list. Luminous for sure listens to your wish list. We might not solve the problem exactly how you want to. Sometimes we solve it in a better way, something that you didn't even think about. But we do listen to feedback, and we implement rather quickly. I think for little issues or just like little wish list things, it goes through a very quick feature request process that gets approved, and depending on the urgency of it, or just where we're at in our roadmap, I mean, you could see that new feature pop up 3 weeks later. And it just depends. But, regardless of the timing, though, we do listen. What about emergencies? So, boom, system down. Taylor, Josh, what do you do? How do we handle emergencies at Luminous?
I'd say, if it's a true emergency, get us on the phone. If it's a true emergency and it's holding you up from conducting business, give us a call and we'll make sure to pull the strings that need to be.
First off, I want to real fast. I do want to say this real fast. So many prospects, they think like, oh, you're a newer company, like you guys are gonna go down easier. Guys, NetSuite, Microsoft, 20-year-old companies, they go down. I don't know if you know that, but like every back-end software, like the random emergencies will come up. Like there's so many NetSuite horror stories of like it just went down and they just didn't care. So the question is, how do we respond to those emergencies, which inevitably they will happen at some point. Like, how does Luminous respond?
Well, I think what you mentioned, it's like I've heard so many horror stories. How do you get a hold of your NetSuite rep? And like you may have their phone number, but like, are you going to hear from them? You may, you might not. I don't know. From what I've heard, it doesn't sound like it. But like you'll hear from Josh and I. So like if you call us, if you text us, you're gonna hear from us, and probably pretty quickly as well. Like we may be on a call, may not be available right at the moment, but if I can find out what's going on through an email or text or whatever, that becomes my new priority number one,
Mhm.
Yep.
and we're gonna get you up and going. Right? That's our goal.
But I will say I've been working at Luminous for like a year and a half, and I can't think of a specific situation where like the system quote went down. So pretty dang reliable.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye.